There should be no surprise at this point when new information is released linking Donald Trump to his literal best friend of 10 years in Jeffrey Epstein. There should be no shock when the photos come out or the videos come out. We should not be bewildered when the emails come out. It's kind of hard not to be at this point. There is just so much information. And it is what we are seeing this morning with the new leak of Epstein and Trump emails that are again showing the disgusting, despicable and criminal connection between these two. And this time, as it relates to Jeffrey Epstein and children, it is so gross. But we are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into this latest batch of emails, I want to start with an update from the person who's been getting them all out there, and that is Robert Garcia, the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, and what he had to say to Chris Hayes last night about what additional information will be coming.
And Republicans, every single step of the way, have tried to block the release. They try to stop our vote on the subpoena. Donald Trump brought in members of Congress to the Situation Room, tried to stop the vote from happening on the floor. And so Republicans, Mike Johnson, James Comer, at every single turn have dragged their feet and participated in this White House cover-up. Of what we currently have, we have one batch of documents from the DOJ. All of those documents were essentially already public records. So that was already given to the public. So there's nothing new there. Of the other documents that we have, much of what we have either is already in the public record, Democrats have already put out as a committee, and we still have not put out yet fully are the bank records. And I'll tell you why. We're working right now with our partners on the Senate Finance Committee, in both the Senate and the Financial Services Committee in the U.S. House. And we are carefully going through a complex system of documents, ledgers, bank statements that connect money laundering, we believe, possibly, and also information about who was paying who and where Jeffrey Epstein was receiving all of his resources from. And I'll note this one other thing, which is important. The Republicans only decided to subpoena two of the banks, Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan. We've asked for over 20 banks to be subpoenaed. So we need Republicans to join us and subpoena the 20 other banks where we want to get information from. All of that is going to be critically important in the weeks and months ahead. But I'll tell you, Chris, we're making really, really good progress.
So if there are images here, I mean, one thing that's striking to me is something that Andrew Weissman said earlier in the program. And this pertains to, say, the birthday book, right, which in some ways I think kicked off a lot of this. The Wall Street Journal is reporting about that. Am I right that nothing from the estate has ever come into the custody of law enforcement? That everything being turned over by the estate, including the photos you got, like this is the first time U.S. government representatives or anyone has gotten this information? Is that true?
We're actually not sure what representatives of the government or the DOJ may have that the estate also has. There's certainly a lot the estate has that, according to some of the DOJ, they do not have. Look, the birthday book, Donald Trump spent weeks saying it didn't exist, as we remember. Right. There have been comments from members of the DOJ and members of the administration that they weren't aware, obviously, of some of what the estate has. And so that is likely true, that there are documents and photos that we're releasing to the public, including possibly ones that we released today, that are not in the possession of the DOJ. But I also want to be very clear that what we've released and what we have is a tiny amount of production compared to what the DOJ has. From what we understand from talking to folks at the FBI as well as the DOJ, there's an enormous amount of documents, of records, of photos, of videos, and other materials in the possession of the Department of...
There is nothing that Donald Trump can do to stop Robert Garcia. And that is why every single little bit of information we get from the Epstein estate, to me, is so important. Because is sure Pam Bondi can stand in the way and put obstacles in front of the December 19th deadline to release everything that's in the Epstein files that is under the purview of the DOJ. But there's nothing she can do to stop Robert Garcia from and getting more evidence from the Epstein estate and finding new co-conspirators, finding new associates of Epstein, getting them on the record, making them testify, share materials. Subpoenas are going out the door every single day. But on top of that, Donald Trump's unwillingness to cooperate. He's calling this a hoax last night, saying that the pictures of him and Epstein were no big deal. And everyone was taking photos with Epstein, and young women should definitely believe that Donald. It just leads reporters as they should have this entire time to investigate further. And that is how we are getting these new emails with Donald Trump and his literal favorite self-avowed pedo. Trump team email to Epstein pedophiles. I want you to know how important you are to me. An email account belonging to Jeffrey Epstein regularly received alerts from Donald Trump's 2020 campaign, and after Epstein's death was addressed under a shocking new name. Newly released records show I Need You Right Now. Pedos read an October 27th, 2020 email from Trump's campaign team signed by Trump and sent to Epstein. A new batch of emails were obtained by Distributed Denial of Secrets, DDO Secrets, a non-profit whistleblower group that shared them selectively with news outlets, including Raw Story. They differ from the document dump of 20,000 pages of files from Epstein's estate released by the House Oversight Committee last month. Kiddos, I want you to know how important you are to me, reads another email from Trump's campaign to Epstein, dated October 1st, 2020. And signed off on by Trump. I'm turning to my strongest supporters like pedos, which is true, reads another dated October 25th, 2020. Epstein was reportedly obsessed with Trump for years, with the same batch of emails revealing that he had purchased basically every major expose about the president. Trump was the single most mentioned individual in the batch of emails released by the House Oversight Committee. And Epstein apparently would coordinate his flights around Trump's Raw Story previously reported. Epstein once called Trump his closest friend for 10 years, with the House Oversight Committee's release revealing that Trump might have spent hours with one of Epstein's victims at his home, and may have spent Thanksgiving with Epstein during his first term in office. Trump has also flown on Epstein's private plane at least 7 times in the 1990s. Pedos, I am so proud to be your president, reads another email from Trump's campaign to Epstein, dated September 14th and signed by Donald Trump. So, just the fact that Jeffrey Epstein's email account had the name Pedos is how you should address it. And they were still continuing to, hang out with him. And by they, I mean Donald Trump's friends, like Steve Bannon's, Donald Trump himself, allegedly on Thanksgiving while he was the President of the United States. This was a man who was undeniably very open about who he was. This idea that Donald Trump can say, well, Palm Beach was full of so many people, and you bumped into them, and there was a dinner, and there was a photo, and there was a camera, and who is even Jeffrey Epstein? I don't know, is such an idiotic response when you see all of the information. Not just about what people knew about Epstein, what they were saying about Epstein, but what Epstein said about himself. You do not make your email address the name that these spam bots call you pedos, unless that is exactly what you are and you are proud of it. That is the guy that Donald Trump was consistently hanging out with that he was happy to. And the only thing that made Donald Trump allegedly have, disdain for Jeffrey Epstein was the fact that he took one of his employees. It was a business spat that had Donald Trump so upset is that he was causing problems at Mar-a-Lago for the business. It had nothing to do with the abuse of girls. Donald Trump never cared about that. It's seeming more and more like he took part in it every single day. I would also say that yesterday the House Oversight Committee's release of those new photos and the women who had their faces redacted again makes it a little bit more difficult to believe that Donald Trump wasn't one of the people abusing these victims. If they had their faces redacted, for what purpose other than they were victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and Donald Trump was seen hanging out with him? Something, by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell had denied, that Donald Trump had ever been around the victims. Ghislaine Maxwell claims that there weren't even victims, and Donald Trump now has her in a 5-star resort prison. So I just really can't believe the bullshit. I never did in the first place, but yeah, I don't know how anyone could say that this is not clear as day, and that the evidence does not continue to just come out. And And if this is what they are hiding right now, and it's already come out again, I just can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what we're gonna see going forward. But honestly, as I'd like to come back to every time I am able, we have talked a lot about this show, about Steve Bannon's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that was taking place very close to the time of his death, and all the information they shared back and forth, and clearly some text messages that have been revealed. Epstein didn't think that highly of Bannon. Bannon was maybe trying to play Epstein as well. These were two guys who had a friendship in which they were trying to con the other one, which is kind of like everything that happens in Donald Trump world. But I think that this needs to be looked into a lot more. And we're going to cover it as much as we can when we're talking about what the Epstein cover-up really is. Because it doesn't just start in this administration. In my opinion, it extends back. It extends back, of course, to Alex Acosta being in the cabinet. I think someone needs to be bringing some serious attention to the fact that the video is being cut up. We're not getting any of it, right? We've seen some emails, we've seen some photos. Where's the video? Video is what I'm really interested in, because Epstein took a lot of video in his house. And if you don't believe me, ask Howard. I was gonna say Lutnick, but Howard Nutlick, as our friend Tim Miller calls him. He said the blackmailer in chief. That's what Epstein is. So where's that video? What's certainly being blocked by Pam Bondi? It's exactly what Adam Schiff had to say right here.
The Trump administration, and whether they've been replaced by anyone of any independence is very much an open question. But I have more confidence generally in the offices of Inspector General than I do in the top leadership of the Justice Department. There have been reports that the FBI devoted 1,000 agents to combing through these files, flagging wherever Trump's name appeared. And there's good reason to be suspicious of whether any documents that might be incriminating the president will see the public light. So one way of trying to make sure that the disclosures are fulsome, as required by the law that was passed on a bipartisan basis, is to get the Inspector General to review the custody of these documents to determine whether any are missing. And the administration is supposed to give us a log of anything they're withholding to determine whether that log is complete or whether the thing's missing from there too.
Yes, it feels like if you were able to look at the log, which they should be able to, if there's more than names, if there's long swaths of things, it raises a lot of questions. Now, the deadline, as I just noted, for the White House to release all the files under the bill Congress passes a week from tomorrow. What expectation? You know, I think a lot of people out there are thinking we're going to see everything that day. It seems hard to believe that's going to be the case. I wish it was. But what expectation do you have on what we may see that day?
Well, I guess my expectation is that they will produce something. And now that something that they produce may be heavily redacted, and they may claim that those redactions are merely to protect the privacy of the victim.
Of course, Pam Bondi is blocking the release of everything she possibly can. And of course, we are going to be calling it out on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And if you haven't already and you want to support the show, you can take a watch. Take a look at my latest interview with Governor Gavin Newsom. It was a fun time. It was last weekend that I shared it, but I think it's still a little timely today. A lot of news broken. A lot of fun had. Give it a check. And as always, if you want to support the show, hit that subscribe button. Leave a like. Blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let him silence you until next time. I'll see you soon.